Good morning, folks, and welcome back to the latest episode of True to Your Roots. Today, I'm joined by Shaun Everitt, who is the renowned expert when it comes to co-production. So today, we're going to talk through some myths and some of the bits and bobs around co-production. But I'll let Shaun introduce himself.
Hi, my name's Shaun. So I'm the Curriculum and Business Manager for Community Roots, and we cover the whole of Lancashire and South Cumbria.
So tell us a wee bit about your role, Shaun, when it comes to business and curriculum. How is that carried out through Community Roots?
So within Community Roots, I work with a number of partners as well as service users and the local community. Our provision in terms of health and wellbeing curriculum is driven predominantly through co-production. And what that means is we don't create anything for our curriculum that isn't co-produced. So it's purely driven by people's interest and lived experience expertise. And we'll work alongside them to create provision that helps other people who might be struggling with their well-being. And working in that way, it means that people have ownership over what we create. They feel that they're part of it. And it doesn't belong to Community Roots, it belongs to the people that create it. We've worked in that way for as long as Community Roots has been in existence, so just over 5 years. And I really think working in that way means that we're creating meaningful content for people. So It isn't just something that we create because we think it's a good idea. It's creating that meaningful, impactful provision. People can access at any time, and they feel that it's theirs. Like I say, there's that equality part of it. So rather than it being professionals delivering a service, it's working alongside people who are going to access it to create it and really feel that, you know, they've got equal share in the service. It isn't a service that's provided for them.
And what kind of, in your experience of being with the team, what sort of impact does it have on somebody's overall well-being and sort of their recovery through their mental health journey?
Well, I think it has a great impact, and I think part of that is because our sessions are created to be informal. So they're not delivering information at people where people can tend to switch off or not really engage in it. So people's well-being tends to be a gradual thing and an inconsistent thing. Whereas I think clinical services are fantastic and they really provide that intervention when people need it, when they're really unwell. What our kind of offer does is support people on potentially a longer term basis, or as long as they feel that they need it. And I think the other element of the support is that it's almost like a peer support offer as well, because you're likely to have people in the room with the same or similar lived experience. You can feel that the person next to you really understands that. So where it's co-produced, it isn't co-produced to help one person, even though that one person might have had a big input into it. It can help the next person as well. And we've really found that one of the biggest comments we get from our offer is, I didn't realise anybody else felt like that. And that's really shows that, you know, if you're working with a community, they can help each other. And that's kind of what our offer is that we're trying to build that well-being community within a community, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's taking what people think is missing and then using everybody's lived experience to apply that learning or create something from nothing, in essence. So on that topic, give us a good example of something that's been co-produced over the last sort of 6 to 8 months and how that's, you know, looking to benefit people in the future.
Well, I think one of the best examples is we did a Northwest-wide project that was funded by what was then Health Education England. And that was looking at the Mental Health Act and a few other bits surrounding that, like mental health advocacy, approved clinicians, and working with the community and with people with lived experience to kind of explain that on a level that people can access and understand. And I think the real benefit of that is even working within a mental health trust it's very complicated.
Yeah.
And it's very acronym heavy, and it's very hard to navigate. And I think people hear these buzzwords of approved clinician or mental health act or 136 suite. And what does that mean? You know, what does that mean to your local person? It doesn't probably mean a lot. It's just something that health professionals do. So I think the aim of that project was to really employ that lived experience of people who've been through that system, and not only to kind of bring it to a level where your person in the street can understand it, but also to feed back to those services about how they communicate with people, how they present to people, and potentially make improvements as well. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the beauty of co-production, is it isn't just, you know, one way. We can give back to the services that are providing for those people and say, look, this is what people are saying. These are the obstacles people come up against. These are the barriers. And that's something that we're very keen to do. And we see ourselves as that kind of bridge between potentially clinical services that will only see people when they're referred to them, and the local community and what they're saying to us. So I think that was one particularly important piece of work. But what we're also working on at the moment is provision for autism and learning disabilities, as well as two kind of separate entities. And I think we've known for a long time that there are areas that there isn't a lot of provision in. And as with a lot of services, it's postcode. It depends where you live. Some services are really fantastic in certain areas, a bit sparse in others. But one thing that we know is there isn't a lot of provision outside of clinical services that really serve people when they're at crisis point.
Yeah.
So we've had feedback from community to say, where's the provision for autism, from our social prescribers that we have contact with, but also from clinical teams that are saying we are getting people into our service that really, if there was provision for them before this point, they wouldn't get to crisis point. We kind of need something to refer to that's maybe, in inverted commas, lower level, but will support those people's well-being kind of moving forward. So we've worked with people with lived experience and professionals to start to create that provision, which we're hoping to have on the timetables around May. And alongside the support for autistic people, we're also creating sessions for carers of those people as well. And then on top of that, peer support groups probably for both those cohorts of people. And that's purely come from what people have fed back to us as what they want. So we haven't decided that. That's come from, this is what we think is needed, and we'll work with them to create that.
Yeah, and that adds just pure strength to those kinds of projects, because oftentimes, you know, in, say, an average world setting, a project comes across your desk, you're like, oh no, I really don't want to do this. But with the beauty of co-production is you get people that want these things and need them and have a real reason for wanting to get involved in producing it. So what usually comes out at the end of that process is something rather spectacular, and it's gone on to support so many people. And I haven't been with the service as long as you have, but the amount of times we've seen a larger scale project come in and it might take 6 to 12 months to finish it off, but at the end of that, it's something that people can look forward to, they can get themselves involved with, and it's just a fantastic process to see the service grow over a long period of time based off of the people that need and want to access it. So good question to follow up on now. Some of the myths that you've come across over your time with co-production. What do people think it is, but what actually is it?
I think the thing with co-production is that the definition of it is quite often hard to pin down. I know when I looked into it, there's around 60 or 70 definitions. So I think that is part of the problem, is that people don't necessarily understand exactly what it is, or it's that kind of thing that someone else does because they don't really have that understanding. But I think the simplest way to describe co-production to somebody who's never even come across the word is starting with a blank piece of paper, and it's driven by people's ideas. So you don't start with an agenda as such or something you want to create. You're just asking people for their input into whatever you do. I think a lot of the time people use the word co-production, and I think it's quite a popular word as well. So these things become fashionable within any industry, but particularly within healthcare at the moment. Co-production is kind of the thing. But I think it's important to remember some of the fundamentals of what co-production is, i.e. it's meant to balance the power between professionals, between members of the public, so everyone has an equal input. Ownership should be shared, so you're not creating something for somebody, you're creating something with somebody and for yourself and for them and for anybody else that wants to access it. So I think one of the biggest things that I try and communicate to people is co-production's fantastic, and I really think that where you can use it, you should use it, but it's not going to work everywhere.
Yeah.
So kind of labeling something as co-production because that's what you feel like you should be doing, but actually doing something slightly different, I think that's where some people maybe trip up. But I think there are levels of involvement that mean that you can still create something meaningful without it being co-production. So, for example, co-design is generally thought of where you start with an idea of what you want to create, but very little kind of meat on the bones, as it were.
Yeah.
So, for example, we want to transform our health service to reduce waiting times. That might be the premise, but there's no idea of how to do that. And that's what co-design is. And that's great as well. So I think sometimes co-production is seen as the pinnacle way of doing things. And people kind of get tripped up on that as to this is what we need to do. Whereas I think where you can do it, brilliant. But I think sometimes you can't do that. But that doesn't mean you steer away from involving the public and the community. I think you can still involve them. It just might not be co-production in its true form.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's a lengthy process. It's not something that can be done, over a week or 2 weeks, for example. Like a good example of it is we've been having a look at doing social media awareness, and that was through feedback given from people that didn't really understand it. What are the dangers? What are the benefits? How do we use it? So this session's been going through co-production now nearly for 2 months. So it's quite a long drawn out process, because the beauty of that process is you'll get people that will stay throughout the process, people that will add their bit and simply want to leave at that point. So having it done over a longer period of time means that what you get out at the end is a more fulfilled project. But at the same time, people want to add bits, change bits, and add their own part to it. We've got parts around doom scrolling. Now, I don't know anything about doom scrolling, but the lady that brought it up was really keen on having that in that awareness. So, I mean, having those sections about it are fantastic. You can share your knowledge and your learning, and then when people come to learn about it later on, it's like, oh, I didn't know about that, but that's through the shared experience of those in the room.
Yeah.
So it's quite an impactful process, and I mean, you learn way more over that period of time than you would have done.
You do, and I think the time factor is something to really to kind of emphasize as well, that you can't really put an end date in it. And I know some people get frustrated by that, but co-production is slow, but it also means that you get something richer out of the end of it. So I think co-production as a process doesn't necessarily fit into your traditional project plan of, right, we need to deliver X in 12 weeks and that's it. Because you might have something after 12 weeks, but is everybody happy with that? Have you involved everybody you want to involve? Does everybody kind of feel that they've input equally? And if not, then it's probably not going to be as meaningful as what you want it to be. So yeah, some of the co-production projects I've been part of, have gone on a while, but you'll still get something that everybody's happy with, and I think that's the main thing, and that it's meaningful. It isn't just doing something for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it adds a sense of pride. I know coming at the end of the HAE project that took quite a long time, that a lot of the people that were involved in it were wanting to come and either help facilitate the session or just see how that work sort of paid off over that long period of time. So it is a remarkably rewarding process, even as staff. There's no end date in sight, which means you don't really need to worry or stress about a deadline, and you can just have a nice conversation while you're doing your work alongside it. So it's quite a rewarding process, and full enough, quite a relaxing one as well. But one last question for you, Shaun. It's a little bit on topic, a little bit off topic. If somebody has a question around co-production and they've never done it before, what does that how would you answer a question around, if I say to you now if you could sum it up really quickly, what is co-production? How would you sum it up?
I would say co-production is a way of changing things and creating something new that everyone feels equally part of and everyone has equal influence in. And I think if anyone's looking to get into co-production, contact us. Either come to one of our advisory groups or our co-production labs, or just email us or send us, your ideas and just say you want to get involved, because we will work with anybody with an idea. As long as it's related to well-being, we're open to anything.
Amazing stuff. So that's a little bit about co-production, folks. If you'd like to learn a lot more about it, we do have a session called Co-Production Explained, usually the third Tuesday of every month. So have a look on our booking system. The link or QR code will pop up on the screen magically somewhere. Just give that a wee scan and get yourself booked on to learn a wee bit more. Got any questions for me, Shaun, before we call it quits?
No, I think we've covered it well there.
Amazing stuff.
Thank you.
Cheers, folks, and thank you very much for watching.